Hi there, this is Rachel Stone introducing transformational leadership, all elements of leadership, but especially transformational leadership, which includes learning to be a coach while you're a leader. All coaches are leaders, but not all leaders are coaches. And my mission is to help solve that. I hope you enjoy. Excuse any background noise today. I'm in a fantastic venue, the Hoof and Hook, in Tenterton, and they kindly let me sit up the back here, rearrange the back room. And today I'm with Marie. She's also a trusted executive coach, and I'll introduce her and ask her to do some work. But before I do that, I'm going to flag up my model, the 9 leadership habits from the trusted executive. We've got the website as well, and we've also got free resources on the website. And today's habit is about choosing to be brave. So I'm going to ask you, Marie, what is the habit of choosing to be brave from your perspective and your experience?
From my perspective, it's around taking risks, but we're talking here about moral bravery. It's about speaking up for the greater good and effectively protecting the integrity of the whole system. So taking responsibility for the team, for the organisation, and letting go of our own ego and our own selves for the greater good. And also about encouraging others to be brave as well.
That's a really lovely introduction to it. Thank you. There is a subtle difference. There's the bravery that's on the surface, taking action, moving forward, striding. But there's also some more subtle elements of bravery, which is doing those things that people might not expect. So going against the grain, looking out for things that are bigger than where you are now, going forward into the bigger sense of the whole, the what is bigger than just that I. We've talked a lot this week in the pillar of integrity. Trusted executive model moves away from one pillar, profit at any cost. We're talking now about 3 pillars, the pillar of ability, the pillar of integrity, and the pillar of benevolence. And under each of those pillars are 3 habits. And we're on pillar of benevolence. Yesterday, we talked about the fact that we need to evangelize, and that's about talking about spreading good work. And now we're talking about being brave. And under that pillar, we're saying, what is it that is expected of a leader or the habit that they can deliver that is about being brave in a moral sense? And I put a little post out today. Often people say a leader is the person that chooses to do the right things, but also chooses to do things that are right. And it's the way round that you look at it. Where do you place the emphasis? And before we came live, you were telling me about a fantastic example of something that you've observed. And I think would really illustrate this habit really well. Would you like to just tell our audience about that today?
We talk about the importance of these habits for both relationships, results, and reputation. And when I was doing a bit of research around the role of being brave for effective leadership, I came across the example of Larry Fink from BlackRock. So a few years ago, he was the one who's really led the way around the importance around environmental social governance, corporate social responsibility. And from a financial services point of view, that was very much against the grain. But actually what's happened, he has stuck his neck out and the performance of BlackRock has rocketed as a result. And he's used his passion about it and anger, if you like, about it to really be brave and step out in that way.
Absolutely. And I think the connection between being brave and feeling a sense of anger about something, we've got some emotions at play here. We step into being brave when we're prompted to because we've been moved by an emotion. An emotion can be fear, and it can also be anger, and passion can sometimes be confused between the two. So it's really important that when a leader gets into that role where they're looking to take action, they're operating from a sense of what they believe is right for the vision and the mission and to achieve those targets and all of those number elements from the deliver piece that we talked about at the beginning of the series. It's about making sure we can achieve those goals, but doing it in the right way and making sure that you're achieving it in a way that is in line with your values. And sometimes that does mean that you have to go against the grain and you have to step up into a place where you might not be comfortable. Quite a lot of these habits, my guest speakers are giving great examples where the habit makes the leader a bit uncomfortable. Choosing to be open might make you uncomfortable. Choosing to be honest about your own feelings might make you uncomfortable. Sometimes having that choice around being brave might be where you go to a place of discomfort because it may be that you have to address some of your own personal fears. And one of the fears that Dr. John Blakey talks about in the book is that fear of rejection. A bit like your example, the leader there has had to go against perhaps many of his colleagues, many of his stakeholders in that arena, especially in high finance, where you're going against the grain. You may be up against that fear of rejection. And you ever come across that in any of your other examples of the work that you've done?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my clients who've been working with recently, she really stood up and stepped out. She took the exec board the task and was brave because she called out some inappropriate ways of being and behaviour that weren't in line with the values of the organisation. And really what she did was she totally let go of her fear. Instead of focusing on the fear about the impact on her, she absolutely thought about the greater good of the reputation and of her colleagues as well. And that's been really tough for her, but she's done it and let go of her own self-concern.
She's chosen to step into bravery for the
Absolutely.
greater good. In a way, the
Yeah.
moral bravery that is well described in the book here, it might not be that the outcome for her personally is advantageous, but for things going forward and for other people following in her footsteps and for the company as a whole, even though they have to go through a period of pain, they get the gain because somebody's taken that act of bravery. I must highlight that we've now got Katy joining us. She's another trusted executive member and she's part of the associate team. She's an executive coach too, just like all of us. And so, Katy, have you got any examples of companies that you've worked with where a leader has really stepped up into being brave?
Yeah, many years ago when I was leaving a telecommunications company, I've seen examples of bravery where we've been having to restructure. And it's doing the moral brave thing, really, of sticking your neck on the line and saying that you're going to communicate when sometimes other people have pushed against that so that everybody can be in that together. Because we know that being brave encompasses everybody within a system together. It worked really well. It was one of my ex-leaders that stuck her neck on the line, a bit like Marie was saying, to say, this is how we're going to do that this time. And we're going to get everybody together and everybody's going to know at once. And there's always that fear of, am I doing it right? Like you said. But again, as it says in the book, it's really important that we look at all the perspectives. And when we are stepping up to be brave, empathy quite often, or becoming innovative, or exploring different options, all help us.
A great point there about those subtle differences between when you're acting in brave, but trying not to go to anger. Sometimes we're moved by emotion, aren't we? We're moved to take action, and emotion is energy in motion. And we want to be aware as a leader that we are being empathetic while we do that. We are trying to respect everybody's boundaries, trying to give people dignity at work. And even if that's the people that we disagree with. So when we're stepping up to be brave in perhaps a conflict situation, or like in your example, where they're going against the grain and it's difficult to get consensus in a situation, it's really important to take all of those emotional intelligence skills into play as well. We can speak with passion and we can be somebody who has passionate feelings, but we don't want to come across as somebody with anger because we won't have open communication when we have that. We want to make sure there's room for two-way communication. I'm really enjoying the fact that we're talking about something like this. We're talking about three pillars. We're talking about not just focusing on profit, and we're talking about what is better for the greater good. And as the economy emerges and evolves, and we're moving into this kindness economy where people really examine how business is carried out today, when you can look at somebody, admire them for their bravery, isn't that a fantastic thing to build your reputation?
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. I mean, when companies step out and leaders step out in being brave, that's when they're going to be more innovative, more resilient, and more ethical as well, and gain the respect not only from their employees, but also their stakeholders and their customers as well. An example in the book of John Lewis, the son of the original John Lewis, stepped out and be brave because he wanted to share equally amongst the employees. And that caused real tension in the organisation. Naturally, they did split the family for some time. But ultimately, we now look at John Lewis, it's still standing, it's still going strong. And that's one of their core values and way of being. Reputation, it can have a huge impact on that.
And also, with things changing so rapidly, nothing is so constant as change as it's ever been. And I heard a quote the other day, and I'm so sorry I can't attribute it to someone because I can't remember who said it. But we're now in a situation this very day that we'll never be in a world that is as stable as it is today. And things will not be changing slower ever again. Everything will always be changing increasingly rapidly. So therefore, it does take an element of bravery to be able to adapt your business and to take your organisation through something that is rapidly changing. The market rapidly changes, the population is rapidly changing, people's expectations are rapidly changing, and there will come a time when it will only be the brave businesses who can do things to meet their stakeholders' objectives as well as their own, from the whole supply chain, the whole community, the whole of the environment. All of those elements have got to be taken. Do we take a decision in our organisation to pivot and change towards something brave and new in order to be the best or to be at the forefront in our sector? Or do we stay safe and wait to see what everybody else does and then follow? Do we become a pioneer, or do we become one that follows the crowd? So it's quite interesting that without the way that the world's evolving now with technology, demographics, and the way society is evolving, it really does take a brave leader to be able to take an organisation forward and to look to the future when we don't even know what the future contains. I heard a statistic the other day that people in school and college now will be applying for jobs that don't even exist yet. And how can they possibly be prepared for that? And it's the same with the workforce. Work will evolve. Going to work will mean something different. And of course, we've got AI coming in as well as another element. All of these things are quite scary when you think about it. So it does take bravery from the leadership team to make people feel secure so they can operate at their best.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. Because if leaders aren't brave, it can lead to missed opportunities. It's weak and ineffective leadership if we're being really harsh. But also, if we're not brave as leaders, particularly if we're not brave in calling out behaviours, as an example, that can lead to really toxic environments and cultures as well. And the implications of that on productivity and on a retention basis are huge.
Definitely one of those trust factors. What happens when you're not there? So if you're in a room and a conversation is taking place or a topic's being discussed or a project's unfolding and you step out of the room and somebody there is not loyal to you, in your absence, somebody's not brave to speak or defend or challenge, we build a culture that is toxic. So it takes bravery to not be a bystander. Going back to when I worked in a college and I was a manager there and we had anti-bullying awareness week. No, and I always thought that organisations should have one of those as I moved into the education sector because it was such a good week where we spent time guiding students, exploring this topic. And we always said it's one of those things you have to be brave to challenge something that isn't right. And now we're here talking about bravery. And in a culture that may be challenging and the market's changing, all those things, you need those brave people to protect those core values of what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable. And I always think that gossip and the rumour mill and banter, but it isn't banter. It's all those things that it takes a brave leader to challenge those inappropriate behaviours so that you can get the culture right, so that you can get proper engagement. And ultimately, you do gain more respect in those situations. I think there's quite a lot of fear in markets. What's going to happen to the interest rate? What's going to happen to the exchange rate? What's going to happen to markets, distribution channels? Can container ships get through? All of this angst that's out there. And I think by supporting leaders in this way, hopefully we can offer a crumb of comfort by helping them to know that these resources are out there.
I think bravery is choosing to be kind to yourself as well. That empathy and having a go, like you've just said, and when things don't go quite the way you want them to go, just keep persevering as well. Another one of the habits that I feel connects really well, we know that they all connect up the 9 habits, but for me, being open. I know when I've been in my biggest moments of challenge and courage, the sooner I become open about situations, whether it be personal or whether it be business, I go from that surviving to thriving again, because you just realise when you reach out to people just how much support you can get as well, just to continue stepping up to that brave, courageous goal that you need to forge forward with sometimes, that really wish you could just delete and go, please go away. But sometimes actually things don't go away from us and we have to move forward. So I think that being open has really worked for me.
Open and being brave go along in parallel, don't they?
The flip side of it, fear is the opposite of being brave. And if we're in a culture of fear, we don't feel psychologically safe. And that has all kinds of implications on being in the organisation in terms of engagement, performance, you name it. Choosing to be brave is also choosing to let go of fear.
Absolutely. I totally love that you've connected it around making that decision. All of our habits are a series of choices that we make that form our behaviours. So I think it's really important to emphasise the fact that this is an element of choice. And as a leader, sometimes we don't have a choice. You're in that position, you've got that responsibility. Sometimes there isn't a choice. You have to step up and take the lead to resolve things, and to push things forward. And I just thought about something then, the fear of rejection, we've talked about that. And also the fact that we were talking about the opposite of being brave is fear. But also sometimes when you step into that fear and take that choice, it does almost give people permission to do the same. And it goes alongside that being open. If you're able to address your fear and take action and be open about that, then the people in the room that are being inspired by you will potentially feel the same. There's these awful brave decisions we have to make sometimes about what's the best for all those people involved in the chain of stakeholders. What is the decision we have to make? And sometimes it is a decision that is the end, and that's really sad. I always start with the end in mind when I'm coaching with people. What do you see as the end point? What are we working towards? What are the outcomes that you're hoping to achieve? And right at the very beginning of the series, we're talking to Sharon about delivery, and it's about setting clearly defined expectations. And it's the same with this one, being brave. Having that level, and I think before we came on, we talked about consistency. How will somebody respond in a situation that's consistent? Not being the same all the time, but people will expect you to be brave and to respond in a certain way.
It's interesting what you said there in terms of when you coach for people to step up and be brave. Coaching as a supportive tool is absolutely key, isn't it? Because we know that we can challenge and support our clients to step into that space, a space sometimes that they may be able to conquer themselves as well.
Absolutely. So being brave and being vulnerable go hand in hand. Being brave and choosing to coach go hand in hand. We've discovered that it's a concentric thing where everything overlaps like a series of Venn diagrams where everything is intertwined with everything else. And one of the things that I like in the book is that when it goes wrong, and there's sections in the book that talk about cracks in the pillar, perhaps somebody hasn't been brave, there's tips in there to say, these are the steps you can take to remedy that. People go to their deathbed and they talk about the things they've regretted, and they always say, oh, I should have done this and I didn't do that. I'm of the opinion now with this habit of choosing to be brave, it's better to go ahead and take the action in a brave way and face the consequences, even if it means you have to go and be brave shortly afterwards and do something else. At least you've not got regret. So taking that brave choice in leadership role can sometimes mean that you are living a life that's full, inspiring other people to do the same, but you won't have the regret that you should have done this. I should have taken that action. I should have made that stand. It's much better to live and not have regret than to go to the end of your career and say, oh God, I wish I could have been braver. That would be so sad.
But it's amazing. It's like you say, out of bravery comes great lessons and amazing stories. It's taking that step, isn't it?
It's a great thing to project yourself forwards. And as a coaches, that's what we're doing all the time, talking to our clients about think forward in future. If you look back at this moment now and you made that decision or that decision, what would you be thinking and what would you be feeling? And knowing that deep sense of regret, you know the decision that you've got to make. That's really powerful.
What we're not advocating here is to go around making brave, reckless decisions and gung-ho and stride out. So at least I was brave. We wouldn't be doing it in isolation. None of these habits exist in isolation. But what we can say is that if you're using these 9 habits and you've got grouping of them all together and you're demonstrating all of them, I always imagine it's the classic plate spinning. If you just did the one stick of just being brave all the time and didn't do the deliver, the coach, all of the be kind, be honest, all of those things in alignment, you would end up with drastic results. The element of being brave, by taking some calculated risks and weighing up all the evidence and using your team to support you, being open, being honest, learning to be humble, all of those things, you're not going to go around just being brave in isolation. None of these habits exist in isolation. I'd like to thank my guest speakers, Katy and Marie. Thank you so much.